European crews. And so it's a young crew, and clearly with the World Championships in Poznan this year, the Polish have invested a lot in across all their boats in rowing.
As we see there, it's the American women who've dominated this event, haven't they?
Yeah.
Winning the Olympics, winning the World Championships 2 previous years before that. Always going to be strong when they come into this.
I think the British know traditionally about side-by-side racing that they'd have to think they were favourites in this. The boat race is obviously the famous one, but tendency to early regattas when you're a junior, you do them side by side on the rivers.
Yeah, that's right.
Ingrained in you how to beat somebody else when they're beside you.
Yeah, do you see the British crew lining up here?
Jess Eddy in the stroke seats. Looking confident.
We've got Louisa Reeve and Olivia Whitlam, who we saw earlier in the coxless pair. Doubling up, sitting at 5 and 6 in the 8.
I think, as we've been saying, those first 250s all about not making mistakes.
So Jennifer Farmer there, just frozen on the picture. Rode at Molesey Boat Club. Has come through. Also played successfully some women's rugby before turning her hand to rowing. Now having to deal with the tough conditions, so it might be a bit like we saw with women's quad race, going up with relatively new crews, relatively inexperienced, having to deal with tough conditions like this at a World Cup race for the first time.
Caroline O'Connor just, you know, I mean, it's probably the first race we've had coxes having to deal with these conditions on the start, give instructions to their crews, added complicating factor, and they're off.
Fairly tentative away first strokes again, but that's probably the best way to do it, isn't it, in these kind of conditions? We see them bumping through the waves on the bow side of the British crew. Look at that.
That is difficult conditions, isn't it? I don't think it's got any worse since we saw the poles come down, but it's nevertheless not the sort of conditions you want to start in. And I think it's really affected the poles. I mean, the poles look like they're doing a steady over distance piece, really, rather than racing, don't they?
Yeah, I've got them at 34 strokes a minute.
Well, I guess Britain might be a length up already, and not quite a length up, but certainly.
It's tough, isn't it, to get the boat up and away?
Yeah.
37 maybe on the Polish women.
Well, I don't know if they're that high, but
it's not what you normally expect, is it, from the start, 200 metres into a World Championship level race?
No. And of course, two of the women in this 8, Reeve and Whitlam, have already won the women's pairs earlier, so it's a second race for them, and they're in the middle, rowing at Louisa Reeve in the 6th seat. That's 3 back from the first row of the boat. You can see stroke Jess Eddy and her partner Olivia Whitlam behind her in the 5 seat.
Yeah, and they'll be looking to establish a solid rhythm, won't they, in these kind of conditions? Get something up and running that they can build as a base pace and set something up that they'll look to build on as the year progresses. We've got 4 women in this Great Britain 8 who've been in the 8 for the last 3 years, raced the Olympic Games, raced the World Championships, and have made a progression, and they want to bring in this new talent looking towards 2012 and establish again another campaign that they can build on and get stronger and stronger.
I mean, you'd like to see this as a head-to-head, but I think it's going to turn into a bit of a procession, and really...
Yeah, well, they did a race for lanes yesterday, didn't they? And it's always hard to know, but the British were able to dominate that as well. They had a good bit of clear water by halfway yesterday, and it looks like they're going to establish the same sort of thing today, just looking to break the poles now, establish the lead, and then command things. You see the Polish doing their best to cope with these conditions and the pressure that the British are putting on them.
Blade's quite high up in the air there. I mean, I don't know whether that's the water or it's the technique.
I think it's a little bit of the headwind and a little bit of the wind, isn't it? A little bit of technique, trying to control those big blades in these kind of conditions. You want the blade to be coming down to the water and to be locking up as early as you can, so you can move the boat past a solid platform, but they're not able to do that so well in these conditions.
Miles Falls Thomas coaches the British crew. He'll want to have a look at that, but see there the stroke of the Polish 8, Katarina Wolna. Some cut back to the British crew, just edging out their lead now in this second 500 metres.
Yeah, Jess Eddy's leading them along, and it looks like they have set up a decent pace, haven't they? 33 strokes per minute. Able to edge away. I think Previously we've been talking about an inch a stroke. It looks like they might be taking out a couple of inches every stroke in the 8. So they look to just close the race out, edge their way away.
I mean, I guess we can talk about crews to come in this event. I mean, Duarte here, the Netherlands to come in. Probably we'll see them in the Munich and Lucerne World Cups. The Germans, they'll come into this event too.
Yeah. Interesting to see what the Romanians have left, because the Romanians traditionally have always had strong women's team, haven't they?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they turn up at the Worlds this year. I think they're probably the age of that crew. They might take the money and run. So
yeah, and of course we've got the Americans who've dominated it each year when it comes to the World Championships, but don't tend to necessarily show up for these World Cup races.
Yeah. So really what we're seeing is kind of a bit of an exhibition race here, with the British completing their first K and moving into the second K of the race. See the stern there of the umpire's launch just across there, the Polish, and they really do look a bit sort of forlorn and tired there now.
Yeah, they're labouring up there at 31 strokes a minute. And it's a tough situation anyway in those conditions, and it's really tough when you're dropped in a one-on-one head-to-head race.
Yeah, sort of look across from Marlene Erkman. I mean, I've sort of been in situations before where you sort of look round and you think, God, I can't see them. So you have to look round even further.
Cox has to work hard now to try and keep them motivated. British women keeping up with that 33.5, 34 strokes per minute. Looking to try and use this as much as they can, as you say. Again, the Cox will be working, trying to think about visualising races later in the year. What would it be like to have the Dutch alongside them, or the Romanians, or the Americans? Possibly the Canadians could come into an event like this with a strong crew.
Yeah, and you know, however they're going, I mean, you've got to come and take your gold medal at a World Cup if the British do win this race that they look nailed on favourites to do at the moment. You know, a gold medal in a World Cup is something that you're going to remember and say, yeah.
Yeah, and I can imagine Paul Thompson will still go away and work out percentages of gold medal times. So how fast are they relative to the world record, and then he'll be able to compare how fast this women's 8 goes to how fast the women's quad went relative to their gold medals, the world record times, and then maybe they'll be trying to win the percentage battle.
It's quite interesting. We do get shots of the Polish crew look back. I mean, you do see the British crew are far more locked on and aggressive than the young Poles. I mean, there's a lot of work needed in that Polish crew. I guess they're going to turn up in the World Championships in Poznan, but they probably won't be in the final, I guess.
No, but we'll have to see what happens, won't we? As the year pans out, see how many crews come in, whether people will choose to double up. Maybe get women's pairs, women's doubles coming together to race in this event.
So this women's 8, 5 of whom were in the Olympic 8 in Beijing, finished 5th. We weren't really in a contention for medal in that event, but they're through into the last 200 metres now. See them, the crowds are giving them a cheer as they come in. They're raising the rate up to about 36, 37 now.
Yeah, we mentioned injuries at the Olympics before, and illness. There was some illness at the British women's 8, wasn't there, at the Olympics? I think they probably feel their job not quite done and try and right some wrongs this year with that.
Yeah, collected a medal in 2007, didn't they?
And that's the British cross the line in 7:10. What a time for women's 8 racing. I mean, that is slow. It shows you how strong their head is.
Well, it does. Against a world record of 5:55 to be coming in 7:10. It's not what you train for. It's not what you expect.
I can't imagine what the lightweight women's singles would come down the course in if they had to race in these conditions.
It's good that we got those races done earlier in the day, I think.
Polish crossing the line now, and you know, it's been tough out there for the British. They've done a good performance. The coach will be pleased with them. And for Reeve and Whitlam in the middle of the boat, it's been a very tough day because that's their second race.
Yeah, 2 races in tough conditions, the second one. It's got to be good for your confidence to know you can handle different conditions, know you can handle 2 races in a day like that.